called Donald Hartung Jr.
Good afternoon, sir. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give the true self you got? Thank you. Please be seated.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Will you state your full name, please?
Donald Wayne Hartung Jr.,
And Mr. Hartung, how old are you?
40,
And in which state do you live?
Virginia.
How long have you lived there?
On and off my whole life.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm in the U.S. Army.
Thank you for your service. Are you related to Donald Hartung Sr.?
Yes.
And is he seated over there at the table with his attorneys?
Yes.
What is your relationship to him?
He's my father.
So that would make Voncile Smith your,
Grandmother.
okay, and John Smith and Richard Smith were your,
Uncles.
did John or Richard ever marry?
No.
Did they ever have any children?
No.
In summer of 2015, did you learn of your grandmother and your uncle's deaths?
Yes.
Okay. And who notified you?
I was actually notified by Donald Sr.
Do you remember when the call was made in relation to when the bodies were found?
I'd say within a week, maybe 2 weeks.
Prior to that phone call from Donald Sr., when was the last time you had spoken to your father?
Probably the previous around Thanksgiving, Christmas time frame, that general area.
Okay. Now, did you have regular contact with your dad at that time?
Not really, no. Maybe every 6 months or so.
Okay, why not?
Well, no, we just didn't really talk that much. Weren't that close.
Okay. Did you have an issue getting a hold of him sometimes as well?
Yeah, he phone was always cut off. Different phone number. Usually I'd have to call RT to be able to get a phone number in order to even call him.
Okay. When is the last time you physically saw your father?
When I was 17 years old.
Now, he and your mother are divorced, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. They were married at one time?
Yeah.
Okay. And how old were you when they divorced?
15-ish.
And have you been close to your father since then?
No.
When your father called you about the deaths of your grandmother and your uncles, what did he say?
When I got the call, the wording was, let me think for a second.
Sure, take your time.
He said, "Son, they're all dead." I was like, that's kind of weird. What are you talking about? He's like, "They're all dead. Your grandmother, RT, and John. They're all dead." That's how I found out.
Okay. And did he say anything about himself?
I believe that during that phone call, it's the first time I was told that he did not have anything to do with it.
Okay. And had you questioned whether he had anything to do with it, or how did that come up?
No, I didn't question it at all.
Okay. Did you question why he was saying that?
What do you mean?
He said, your family's dead, I didn't do it, right?
Yeah, well, he said they were dead, and he went into a little bit of the reason, you know, that something had happened with them in the house. Possibly they were murdered, and then we may have talked about some other stuff, I don't know. But that came up in the conversation, yeah.
That he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, but you hadn't questioned him at that point?
No.
Okay. Now, prior to their deaths, when was the last time you had spoken to either your grandmother or Richard?
I think it was May.
Did you talk to your grandmother or Richard often, not often?
About the same general amount. I probably talked to them a little more often, about 3-4 times a year.
Now, was there some sort of rift between your grandmother, Richard, and John, you, and your father?
Can you phrase that for me again? You're talking about between me and them, or him and them? What are you referring
Talking
to?
about them and him.
You're talking about from when I was a child?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there was a situation with John when I was a kid. He exposed himself to me when I was a child, and I had brought it up to my mom probably a couple of days later, and because of that, a rift had formed between them. I don't think they, I mean, I was a kid at the time, so I
Yes,
don't know
sir.
what happened behind closed doors, but I know they didn't talk for a good period of time.
Okay.
And I know at some point in time, everybody moved to Pensacola. My grandparents, and John R.T. and all them.
Okay. And I apologize. You said that John exposed himself to you
Yes.
when you were a child?
Yes.
Okay. And you told your dad?
I told my mom about it.
Okay. And then did your mom tell your dad?
Yes.
Okay. And then did dad go to your grandmother?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And then whose side did your grandmother appear to take?
Oh, she took John's side. It's pretty obvious.
Do you remember about how old John was at the time?
I'd like to say they're 10 to 12 years older than me. So if I was 4-ish, they would have been teenagers at that point in time.
Teenagers as in like mid-teens?
Yeah, mid-teens, 15, 16. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay, I understand, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry to bring it up. Did that incident seem to separate your father from the other three?
Yes.
Now, going back to 2015, sorry to jump around, did your father bring that situation up with John?
Yes.
Okay, and what was the nature of that conversation?
So I got a call, and the call actually started with him saying, "You remember a long time ago when you were a little boy?" And I was like, "Where are you going with this?" He's like, "You remember a long, long time ago when you were a little boy, a situation with Johnny?" And then it clicked. I was like, "Why? Why would I actually forgot about it at that point in time?"
Right.
I was like, "Why are you telling me about this?" He's like, and then that's when he went into the explanation that about the Walmart thing, where he thought that he had heard from an investigator, maybe from the Department of Defense or something, that John may have did something at a Walmart. And I guess it was kind of backing up, reinforcing the fact that he's maybe a predator or something like that.
Okay.
And that's how it's basically explained to me.
When did you have that conversation with him in relation to the murders of your family?
Before he got arrested, so it would have been within that 2-month period of time.
Were Bonnie, RT, and John close?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they lived together as far as I can remember.
Okay. And what about your father? Where did he fit into that picture?
I think initially he was, this is going back way farther than I can really remember, but I know he originally was with him, and then he ended up marrying my mom, and then there was a little bit of rift initially between my mom and my grandmother.
Okay.
But then I think they reconciled and started going over again. And then the situation with Johnny happened. And then, of course, there was another split.
Okay.
So he's always kind of like it seemed like he was kind of the black sheep of the group over there. He was always separated from the rest of them and stuff until him and my mom got divorced. And he lived at the ocean front of Virginia Beach by himself for a little while. And then he moved down to Pensacola, which surprised me, but he moved down here.
Okay. Was your dad a chess player?
Yes.
Okay. Was he good?
As far as I can tell, he taught RT, and RT was like the chess champion or something like that, so, yeah.
Now, Mr. Hartung, are you currently a party to the litigation of Bonnie, John, and RT's estates?
Yes.
And at this point, who is the sole heir to their 3 estates?
Donald Sr.
Okay. And do you know the, what is your understanding of the estimated value of that estate?
Somewhere around 800-ish thousand, that general range.
Okay. Now, if your father is disqualified from inheriting the estates, who becomes the next qualified?
As the next in line, it's me.
Now, did your grandmother Bonnie contribute to you during your lifetime?
They sent me a care package when I was in Iraq once, but that's
That's it.
that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
No problem.
Any questions, Mr. Bruce?
Mr. Hartung, my name's Michael Griffith. I represent your dad. I don't think we've spoken before.
Oh, we have on the phone.
Did we speak?
We did speak when it very first happened.
Okay.
You called me.
Now, you said your dad seemed to be the black sheep.
That's right.
And you listed 2 incidents. He was the black sheep because he married your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then he became the black sheep after John exposed himself and you brought it to your mom's attention.
That's correct.
And those are the only 2 times you know that he had a rift with his mother and brothers.
That I personally know, yes. I've been told other things by my mother from before
But
that.
what
but
you personally know.
personally know, yes.
Okay. And then, unfortunately, he and your mom divorced.
Yes.
And a few years after that, did he move back to Pensacola?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that if your dad gets convicted in this case, then you inherit the funds?
Yes.
And when he spoke to you about the incident that happened by telephone when you were 4 or 5, I think you said?
Right. Yep.
Did he you said Department of Defense, was it Homeland Security that had contacted him about John?
I don't remember the details. Department of Navy, Homeland Security, something along those lines. Because I knew that's where RT worked, and he was talking about that group.
And they had contacted your dad about John at Walmart?
Yes.
Okay. So he was telling you what he had been contacted by the government agency?
Yeah, he was telling me that was the theory.
And you've hired an attorney to represent you
Yes,
in the probate action?
that's right.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any further? Thank you, sir. You can step down. All right, members of the jury, we're going to take a break at this time. We'll be in recess until 2:20.